Count Todd woke the next morning to a persistent headache and a dull, spreading pain through his body. For a moment, he couldn't make sense of his surroundings. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar, and the room carried none of the comforts of his own estate. He pressed a hand to his temple, trying to steady himself. "Where am I?" he muttered under his breath. The last clear memory he could grasp was his visit to the Peach of May. After that, everything blurred, fragments of unease, a confrontation, and then pain. As the memory of the previous night slowly returned, his expression tightened. The encounter with the woman he had believed to be an escort had not gone as expected. The situation had escalated, and he had been left injured, though the details remained hazy. A flicker of fear passed through him. "Is anyone there?" he called out, his voice strained. "Someone, please." The door opened before he could finish. Blaine Shade stepped inside, composed and unhurried. He leaned briefly against the door before moving closer. "You're awake, Count Todd," Blaine said, his tone even. Todd blinked, trying to focus on him. "Duke Shade's son." "Then this is the Shade estate?" he asked, wincing as he shifted slightly on the bed. "It would be best if you didn't move too much," Blaine replied, pulling a chair closer and sitting beside him. Todd exhaled slowly, his body still weak. "What happened to me?" he asked. Blaine regarded him for a moment before speaking. "Are you familiar with the Peach of May?" he asked. Todd hesitated, then gave a vague response. "Pardon?" Blaine's gaze sharpened slightly, but his tone remained controlled. That establishment was operating as an illegal brothel under the guise of a business. It was exploiting young girls. Todd kept his expression neutral. "I see. I received an anonymous tip and confirmed it myself yesterday," Blaine continued. "While searching the rooms, I found you unconscious and severely injured. Unfortunately, whoever attacked you had already escaped." Todd swallowed, saying nothing. "Your condition was serious," Blaine added. "I treated your wounds as best I could." There was a brief pause before he continued, more directly. "However, the damage you sustained will likely prevent you from having children in the future." The words landed heavily. Todd stared at him, struggling to process what he had just heard. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Unseen by the two men, Rita stood just beyond the room, listening. Her expression remained indifferent. Todd took a moment to steady himself before speaking again. "What did you tell my household?" he asked. "I informed them that you were injured while assisting with the investigation," Blaine replied. "Nothing more." Relief flickered across Todd's face. "Thank you," he said. Blaine's expression shifted slightly. "I won't be able to maintain that explanation indefinitely," he added. "The Shade family values honesty." Todd understood the implication immediately. His composure broke as urgency replaced it. "Please," he said, reaching out. "I ask that you keep this matter private." Blaine didn't respond right away. "My younger sister, Julia," Blaine began. "She plans to join the Royal Guard." Todd quickly seized the opportunity. "I can ensure her acceptance," he said. "I'll go further, she'll be appointed head of the guard." Blaine pulled his hand away. "No," he said simply. Todd froze. "Reject her application," Blaine continued. "Make sure she has no path into the Royal Guard." Todd stared at him, confused. "I don't understand." "I won't allow her to put herself in danger," Blaine said, his tone calm but firm. "She's not suited for that kind of life." Todd found the reasoning difficult to accept. From what he knew, Julia Shade was neither fragile nor easily deterred. "Still," he nodded. "I understand," he said. "In return, please keep this matter confidential." Blaine held his gaze for a moment, then gave a small nod. "On the Duke's name, I will," he said. "For now, you should rest. Someone from your household will arrive soon." With that, he stood and left the room. Once outside, Blaine's composed expression loosened slightly. A faint trace of amusement crossed his face as he walked down the corridor. To think that was her request, he thought to himself. He stopped in front of another door and knocked. Inside, Rita turned at the sound. When the door opened, she found Blaine standing there. "Lady Verda," he greeted, giving a small bow. She returned the gesture. "I'm glad I could be of help," she said. "You were," Blaine replied. For a brief moment, he simply looked at her, as if considering something. Rita noticed the pause and grew slightly self-conscious under his gaze, though she said nothing. Blaine's expression shifted into something more thoughtful, though he didn't voice what was on his mind. After a moment, the silence passed, and the scene settled back into formality. "Please let me know if you ever require my assistance. I'd be glad to repay the favor," Blaine said, his words carrying a faint undertone that seemed directed at Rita. Rita paused, briefly caught off guard, but soon composed herself with a small, controlled smile. "That gratitude, could you show it to me now?" she asked, stepping a little closer. Blaine hesitated at first, but her calm expression disarmed him. "How may I help you, Lady Verda?" he asked, placing a hand lightly at her waist before letting go as if testing the boundary. Rita removed her gloves without a word, revealing faint bruises on her hands. Blaine's expression shifted immediately. "What happened?" he asked, taking her hand more carefully this time. Rita winced slightly, the memory still fresh. "A small incident when my fiancé visited," she said, her tone deliberately vague. Beneath her composed exterior, however, she held on to the resentment from that encounter with both Jean and Baron Jaccard. "My, he must be quite forceful," Blaine remarked, studying her reaction. "So, what is it you need from me?" Rita's gaze sharpened. "Do you know Baron Jaccard?" The question caught Blaine's attention. He studied her for a moment before responding. "Publicly, he's nothing remarkable. No real influence, little wealth. He serves as your fiancé's guard," he said, moving to sit down. "But that's only the surface. He also owns an underground establishment, the Secret Boutique of Dreams. It deals in rare and unusual items, though it's not easily found unless you know where to look." Rita remained silent, absorbing the information. It confirmed what she already suspected: Jaccard was more than he appeared. Watching her, Blaine formed his own assumptions. "So she's like the others after all," he thought, recalling the attention he'd received at a recent ball. "Duke Shade's son looks particularly striking tonight," one lady had whispered. "How can someone look like that?" another had added, barely hiding her admiration. Blaine had greeted them politely, though he'd noticed how quickly their attention shifted when another man was mentioned. It had amused him then, and now, observing Rita, he felt a similar curiosity. "Then what do you know about my fiancé, Count Jean Lawrence?" Rita asked, her tone measured but deliberate. The question surprised him. For a moment, he wondered if this was part of a calculated act, but her expression suggested otherwise. "I'd prefer your honest opinion," she added. Blaine gave a faint smile. "It's a shame. A lady like you insists on speaking about another man instead of me." Rita responded smoothly, matching his tone. "Then what would improve your mood?" He considered her for a moment, intrigued by how far she was willing to go. But before he could press further, Rita stepped closer, not with hesitation, but with quiet confidence. For a brief moment, Blaine lost his composure. The shift in distance, her calm control, it unsettled him more than he expected. He found himself reacting before he could think, caught off guard by how easily she had reversed the dynamic. Then, just as quickly, Rita pulled away. "Get a grip," she whispered, her voice low but firm. The words snapped him back to himself. She straightened, adjusting her gloves as though nothing had happened. "Consider that in advance," she said, her tone returning to its composed, almost playful edge. "I trust you'll provide more useful information next time." Blaine remained silent, still processing what had just occurred. "No need to escort me," Rita added as she turned toward the door. "Goodbye, for now." And with that, she left, leaving Blaine seated in stunned silence, no longer certain he had been in control of the conversation at all. Blaine Shade stood by the window, his gaze unfocused as he replayed his recent encounter with Rita. There was something about her that unsettled him, not just her bluntness, but the way she seemed to see through him so easily. He realized, with some irritation, that he had let his guard down. That mistake alone was enough to make him reconsider how he approached her. Whatever her intentions were, he couldn't afford to treat her lightly again. For now, distance felt like the safest choice. At Alberhart Manor, Rita returned to her room with noticeably slower steps. The moment she reached her parlor, she let herself fall into a chair, exhaustion catching up to her all at once. She muttered that she would clean up later, but the thought barely settled before sleep overtook her. In her half-conscious state, she became aware of a faint herbal scent and a steady, careful touch easing the tension from her body. The sensation was comforting enough that she instinctively called out for Jana. Instead, Ian's voice answered her. He explained that she had looked worn out and that he thought helping her relax would be appropriate. Rita, still groggy, didn't immediately object. The relief was undeniable, even if it came from someone she didn't entirely trust. As the moments passed, her thoughts sharpened. She grew increasingly aware of how skilled Ian was, which only deepened her irritation. She didn't like relying on him even indirectly, and yet she hesitated to stop him outright. That internal conflict only made her more annoyed. Ian eventually broke the silence, noting that she had been seen spending time with Blaine. His tone was measured, but there was a clear implication behind his words. He reminded her that, as someone already engaged, appearances mattered. Rita stiffened slightly at that, sensing that his concern wasn't entirely innocent. When his behavior crossed a line, her reaction was immediate. She struck his hands away and stood up, her expression cold and decisive. The earlier drowsiness had completely vanished. She reminded him, without softening her tone, that she had already warned him to keep his distance. Ian attempted to justify himself, but his explanation only made things worse. Rita didn't entertain it for long, her anger was clear, controlled, and deliberate. When she warned him again, it wasn't empty. Ian, now visibly shaken, lowered himself to retrieve what he had dropped, his composure slipping. Before leaving, he brought up her engagement, specifically, her connection to the Lawrence family, framing it as a matter of reputation. That detail caught Rita off guard. For a brief moment, her anger shifted into something sharper, more calculating. After he left, her frustration surfaced again, though this time it carried a different edge. The mention of external backing, of influence beyond her immediate reach, gave her something new to think about. Her expression slowly changed, settling into something more controlled, almost amused. Later that day, she stood before a mirror while Jana helped her prepare. Rita observed herself carefully, her thoughts clearly focused on what lay ahead. Every detail mattered, from her appearance to the faint scent she carried. She seemed to be planning for more than just a simple outing. Jana handed her a small item, and Rita accepted it without hesitation. There was no need for further explanation between them, whatever plan they had, it was already understood. Once ready, Rita gave a simple order, and the two of them left the manor under the cover of night. They moved quietly through the streets until they arrived at a shop with an overly grand sign promising to fulfill any desire. Rita found it unimpressive, but she didn't let that show. Instead, she maintained a polite expression as they entered. Before stepping inside, she made sure Jana remembered everything from the note she had given her earlier. Jana answered confidently, confirming not only that she had memorized it, but also that she understood what to do next. That response seemed to satisfy Rita. Inside, they were greeted by a shop attendant. Rita took a moment to look around, her eyes scanning the space with quiet scrutiny. When she finally spoke, her question was simple, but it carried weight. Was this truly everything they had to offer? The attendant confirmed it, though his confidence wavered when he noticed the bandages on her hand. Something about them seemed to catch his attention, though he couldn't place why. Jana quickly stepped in, voicing dissatisfaction with the shop selection. Her tone was sharp, drawing the attendant's focus. Rita, in contrast, remained quiet for a moment longer, allowing the tension to build. When she finally stepped forward, her demeanor shifted. Her voice softened, almost hesitant, as she clarified what she was looking for, something to help her sleep, something that could bring deep, uninterrupted rest. The contrast between her composed presence and the subtle change in tone was deliberate. And judging by the attendant's reaction, it was effective. A visible chill ran through the sales attendant, leaving him momentarily unable to respond. Rita stepped closer, composed and direct. "I'm looking for Sleeping Beauty," she said. Standing slightly behind her, Blaine Shade lowered his voice. "On the surface, this shop looks ordinary," he explained, "but its real trade is illegal potions." Rita glanced at him, caught off guard. "Illegal potions?" "Strong ones," Blaine continued. "Hallucinogens, heavy tranquilizers, stimulants that keep people awake through the night, and rumors of something worse. A poison that mimics death, putting the user into a deep, lifeless sleep until it eventually becomes real." Rita's expression shifted, a faint, ironic smile forming. "And they call that Sleeping Beauty." The attendant still hesitated, unsure how to respond. Rita softened her tone and reached for his hand, her gesture deliberate. "Please." The contact seemed to break his resistance. "All right. Just a moment." Elsewhere in the crowded open market, Lucia turned quietly to Jana. "Do you have it?" "Yes, miss," Jana replied, keeping her voice low. "If anything feels wrong, I'll signal immediately and call the guards." They exchanged a brief nod. The plan was already in motion. Disguised and moving quickly through the busy streets, Rita kept her head low, her thoughts focused. Did he take the bait? She wondered. Then she heard it. "Stop! Miss Alberhart!" The voice cut through the noise of the crowd. Rita's steps faltered for a fraction of a second before she steadied herself. So he noticed. A man pushed through the passers-by with urgency, reaching her and grabbing her shoulder, turning her around. Rita's eyes widened slightly as she recognized him. Baron Jackard. He held her firmly by the waist, stopping her from slipping away. "What are you doing?" Rita demanded, her tone controlled despite the sudden confrontation. For a moment, Jackard seemed distracted, his senses catching the faint scent of her perfume. Then his expression hardened. "Miss Alberhart," he said, guiding her toward a quieter corner, away from the crowd. "I was told you purchased a potion. Are you trying to take your life again?" "That is none of your concern," Rita replied evenly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "Hand it over," Jackard said, extending his hand. "While I'm asking politely." Rita shook her head. Her expression remained firm, though her eyes grew glassy with restrained emotion. Jackard moved closer, placing a hand against the wall beside her, blocking her path. "Then I'll take it myself." He restrained her movements, preventing her from slipping away. Rita struggled, trying to create distance, but he held his ground, focused solely on retrieving the item. "You brought this on yourself," he said quietly. "Don't resent me for it." He surged quickly, his actions direct and unyielding. Rita resisted, pushing against him, but he continued until he finally located a small pouch tied at her waist. With a sharp motion, he pulled it free. "No!" Rita cried, the composure in her voice breaking for the first time. Jackard seized her wrists briefly to keep her from interfering. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Jean, you know what he is. You know it too." He paused, only for a moment, but said nothing. "This is the only way I can escape him," she added. Silence lingered between them. Then Jackard released her. "You cannot die," he said quietly. "Not while I'm still here." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away, leaving Rita standing alone, unsettled but composed. After a brief pause, she spoke softly, almost to herself. "Jackard, you care about Verda, don't you?" "Miss." Jana hurried toward her, clearly distressed. "Are you all right?" "I couldn't see clearly from where I was, I didn't realize." "It's fine," Rita interrupted gently, offering a reassuring smile despite her disheveled appearance. Don't blame yourself. Jana's eyes fell to Rita's damaged cape, her guilt deepening. I'm sorry. Really, it's all right, Rita repeated. I'm just tired. She turned slightly, already shifting her thoughts away from what had just happened. Let's go back to the manor. I'd like some of your tea. Jana nodded quickly, wiping her eyes. Of course, miss. I'll prepare it right away. Together, they left the crowded streets behind, returning toward Alberhart Castle as the tension of the encounter slowly gave way to quiet reflection. Back at the castle, Rita sat in her room with her handmaiden, Jana. The air carried a faint trace of perfume as Rita lightly sprayed some onto her wrist, her attention divided. No word from Julia yet, she asked without looking up. Jana lowered her gaze. No, miss. I'm sorry. We've sent several calling cards, but there's been no reply. Rita's lips curved slightly, though there was little warmth in it. She must be too embarrassed to show herself after failing to join the royal guard, she thought. Then, aloud, more composed, keep sending them. She'll respond eventually. Jana nodded, her hands tightening briefly in quiet resolve. Rita moved on without further comment. She picked up a small pouch and a letter from the table before leaving the room. When she arrived, Ysha was already seated, waiting in silence. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes followed her the moment she entered. Sorry to keep you waiting, Rita said as she sat opposite him. As she settled in, Ysha caught the faint scent lingering around her. It was familiar. Tatum, he noted silently. I need your help, Rita said, her tone measured, though her expression held a trace of intent. How may I assist you? Ysha asked, his voice even. Verda's parents have sent a letter, Rita explained. They're currently in Tatum for a transaction. She paused, watching him. That's your homeland, isn't it? Ysha did not answer. The silence stretched just long enough to feel deliberate. Rita leaned back slightly, her thoughts drifting for a moment. Her first encounter with Ysha came back to her, along with the frustration and resentment she had felt at the time. She had not forgotten the blood-stained bounty paper she had hidden away, nor the conclusion she had drawn from it. If this person could assassinate someone so protected, she had thought then, they can be useful to me. The memory shifted, sharper now. She had gone to his door without restraint, knocking loudly enough to draw attention. When a nearby resident protested, she had snapped back without hesitation, her patience already worn thin. The disturbance only ended when Ysha himself opened the door slightly, studying her with quiet suspicion. She had pushed her way in, holding up the bounty paper. This is you, right? She demanded. Ysha had let out a quiet sigh before stepping aside to let her enter. Inside, once they were seated, he spoke first. My name is Ysha, he said. And you? I'm Rita, she replied, her voice tighter than before. They say you're a powerful sorcerer, she added, brushing at her mouth where a faint stain remained from a suppressed cough. Ysha's response had been neutral. If I grant your wish, you'll believe that. If I cannot, then I suppose you won't. Rita's composure had faltered then. Her hands tightened against her dress. I'm dying, she said plainly. Can you save me? Ysha had stood, unimpressed. Do I look like a physician? Before he could leave, she caught his arm. Then what about killing? She asked, her voice sharper now. How many people can you kill? That was when his expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. The world follows balance, he said. If you want one life taken, another must be given in exchange. I'll give mine, Rita said immediately. Take someone else's instead. Ysha studied her. How old is the person? And how much time do they have left? About 40, she answered after a brief pause. Maybe 20 years. That won't work, he said. You don't have enough time left. The exchange would fail. The realization had settled heavily on her, but she didn't give up. Then, what about someone who wants to die? She asked. That was when Yersha's expression shifted into something more thoughtful. I may have an idea, he said after a moment. Something that could work. The memory faded as Rita returned to the present. Now, seated across from him again, she slid the letter across the table. Verda's parents are staying at the palace. They've already dined with the Sultan and his wife. Would you like to read it? She asked. Yersha barely glanced at it. You didn't bring me here to discuss trade. Rita didn't deny it. I need a potion, she said. Not something ordinary. Something subtle. Difficult to detect. Yersha's gaze sharpened slightly. And what kind of effect? A stimulant, Rita replied. Not for pleasure. Something that drives a person into uncontrollable aggression. She leaned forward just enough for her voice to lower. My parents are away, she continued. It's the right opportunity to deal with my fiancé. Yersha watched her quietly. Her expression remained composed, almost harmless at a glance, but the intent behind her words was clear. After a moment, he exhaled. Send someone in 10 days, he said, standing. It will be ready. Rita's shoulders eased slightly. Thank you, she said, her tone more sincere now. She offered him the pouch she had brought. A small gift, she added. Yersha opened it and examined the contents, dried dates, cloves, argan oil, and saffron. His reaction was subtle but noticeable. He appreciated the selection. I wanted to bring something better, Rita explained, but this was what I could arrange in time. Yersha inhaled faintly, the scent of the contents clearly familiar to him. You've been helpful to me, Rita said. I won't forget that. One day, I'll return the favor. Yersha didn't respond immediately, but he didn't dismiss her words either.
Thank you for watching this episode of our manhwa recap. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of this story with us. If you loved the content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more amazing manhwa recaps. See you in the next episode.